I repeat that because Facebook or something somewhere down the line chops off the beginning sometimes. So I'll repeat that it's Thursday, September the 3rd. Now, most of you know me, and most of you know that I would classify myself as a teacher. I enjoy reading the Word of God. I enjoy understanding the words in it. I don't view myself as a preacher or as somebody called to alert the church or anything. But I have to tell you that for the last few days, I can't set aside the conviction that we are entering a period of intense spiritual warfare. And you know, I've said that for several days, and for the last 3 days I've talked specifically about some of the armor of God. Over those few days I've heard accounts from several of the faith leaders who were at the White House when President Trump addressed the National Republican Convention. And I heard somebody saying that as they were sitting in the Rose Garden, although they could hear the president, and apparently what the president said was picked up by TV and you didn't hear the rest of it, if you were in that Rose Garden area, there were thousands of people surrounding there. And they'd come with speakers and with klaxons and and they were intent on making a noise and causing disruption. And then I heard from several of those leaders that were there, when they came to leave the White House, they were accosted. Many felt that they were in physical danger. Some of them took very circuitous routes to get out of there and to get to their hotels, etc., etc. And the overall conviction that I heard from men that I respect was that they felt they were confronted by evil. Now, hear me, I'm not saying that President Trump is, what can I say? I don't think he's everybody's ideal. And I think there's many things that we all can find to question about President Trump. But I also believe that there has not been a president who has sought to extend our religious freedom and to stand up for the things that we count precious, whether it's support of Israel or the right to life or etc., etc. And I believe that there is a spiritual attack that their primary objective is to see him defeated. But hear me, if President Trump is defeated in the elections, this war that we're seeing going on will not stop. I think President Trump is a focal point of a lot of the attacks, but this is a spiritual war, and if he is defeated, I believe that war is going to ramp up even more. Now you say, well, why would it? Well, I'll tell you why it would, because the objective of this spiritual war is to cause the defeat of our nation and the principles on which it was founded. I believe we're in a period of intense warfare, and whether you support him or whether you don't, you need to be standing up for America. You need to be recognizing that this is not a political war. This is not a war of words. It's a war in the spirit realm. I've said the same thing for the last few days. I just can't get away from this conviction that we are in a critical time. I believe we are at war. And I've told you that we have to come at this from that perspective. It's time that the church and that we wake up and that we intercede for our nation and we surround our leaders in prayer. And yes, I personally believe we need to be asking for their protection, but we need to be praying for mercy from God. You know, He knows what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in the election. I know what I would like, but it may be that God has other plans for our nation. I'm not sure that we can expect God to, if you want, sit by when we flout his word, when we sow evil, we ignore his commands, we turn our back on God. And I don't know if he will set aside judgment. I believe we can, and we should be praying for mercy. But as I've been telling you, I believe that right now and for the next period of time, we need to be aware of the fact that we're in a spiritual war, and we need to be doing what Ephesians 6 told us. Put on the whole armor of God. I'm not going to repeat everything that I've said, but I will tell you that I believe we need to put it on, having our loins girt about with truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness. And today, I want to talk to you about verse 15. Verse 15 of Ephesians 6, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. I'll tell you what, if ever there was a time that we need to have our feet shod with the gospel of peace, it is right now. But when you hear that phrase, the gospel of peace, and I've actually seen in some translations this talked about as the sandals of peace. Well, maybe that's an accurate translation, I don't know, but I tell you what, when I think of putting on armor, I don't think of putting on sandals. They're the sandals of peace, maybe. Maybe that's an appropriate thing because we serve a God of peace. But it seems to me that a bunch of people are wearing stuff today that they should leave home. This is not a time for wearing sandals. Why? Because sandals aren't part of an armor. There's a bunch of people, to be honest with you, in the church that are wearing flip-flops. Now, I'm not talking about flip-flops, you know what I'm talking about, but some people are flip-flop people. They're ever changing. They're not ready for war. They're not ready to do any serious battle. They're wearing flip-flops, stuff that should be used when you're at the beach having a good time. And then there's other people, I believe, who are wearing sneakers. Sneakers don't provide you any protection. You don't, if you're working on a construction site or if you're going off to war, I'd like to see what happens if you turn up and report to the sergeant major and you're wearing sneakers. He's going to say, where's your boots? This is a time for us to be wearing boots. It's a time for us to recognize what Romans 1:16 says. Romans says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. This is not a time for flip-flops. This is not a time for sandals. It's a time for us to realize that we cannot be quiet. We have to stand up. We have to be bold. And when I read of and I heard of what people were going through as they tried to leave the nation's first house, as they tried to leave the White House, and they're surrounded by people abusing them and screaming at them and spitting at them and all the rest of it, makes me feel, wow, I'm grateful that those people stood up. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. In fact, I heard one of them was a gentleman named Keith Christ, who used to be a member of the power team. And it caused me to think back to many years ago. I was with the power team as we were down in downtown San Francisco on Halloween night. And the stuff that was going on down there was unbelievable. But in the middle of that came John Jacobs. Many of you remember John, but John's a huge guy. And he came into the middle of all of that stuff that was going on, holding his Bible up. And I don't know that he said it, but to me what he was representing, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation. And this is the day for us to be declaring that. So if you're wearing flip-flops, get them off. If you're wearing sneakers, get them off. Get some combat boots. And maybe where we plant our feet, we're planting our feet with the expectation and the promise that peace can reign. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. Now I want to read to you one last little piece of Romans 1, because I think it's a warning. So let me read the next two verses for you. I'll go back. Right? Not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and then to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed, from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. That's how we live, right? We're living by faith, and I'm not going to go back and rehearse everything I've talked about, the shield of righteousness, but we are living by faith. But then it says in verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of man. And listen to this, who hold the truth in unrighteousness. So you hear what that just says? The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. I pray to God that we are not going to be found guilty of that. I pray that we're not going to be found guilty of holding the truth in unrighteousness. Let's be bold. Let's be vocal. Let's stand up. Let's say to ourselves, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. Yeah, it may be unpopular, and for the next 60 days, I believe that we're going to have to intercede. We're going to have to put on the armor, all of the armor. We're going to pray for mercy. We're going to pray for protection. But I pray that you pick up what I'm trying to convey to you today, that we are in a period of intense warfare. I don't know what's going to happen on November, whatever it is. I don't even know what day election day is. Early November is interesting because early November the 5th, is a key date for me growing up, because November the 5th is Guy Fawkes Day. And if you don't know what Guy Fawkes Day is, I'll tell you sometime. But it's the British equivalent of July the 5th. That's the day where in Britain we have fireworks to commemorate capturing somebody that was trying to blow up the Houses of Parliament. I just pray that this early November, God's will be done, and that all of those forces that seek to cause disruption and all the rest of it will be defeated. I pray that what we ask for is what God will do, but we also end every prayer, right, by saying, Lord, but your will be done. It is just possible that God has a different plan than mine, and maybe it's true for you too. So stay in prayer. Make sure that every day you get up and you just go through the list of the armor that we're supposed to be wearing, whether it is, well, I'm not going to go back and repeat it all. You've heard it. So the Lord bless you. Keep yourself strong. Keep yourself alert. Make sure that you know what's going on around. When you look at what's going on in the world, ask Him for the sensitivity and the awareness to know that these are indeed critical times. This is not a time for flip-flops. This is a time to prepare for war. The Lord bless you, keep you, make His face to shine upon you, and I'll be back tomorrow. God bless.